Good evening and welcome to this Wednesday's webinar. This evening is a very special webinar in that we have presentations from colleagues in Pakistan and also from a colleague in Ireland who trained in Pakistan but is now working in Ireland. Our first presentation is from Professor Shamin Qureshi, who is Professor of Surgery at the Jinal Postgraduate Medical Center in Karachi. He's followed by Professor Fawad Ali Moosa, who is Chairman of Surgery at Dow International Medical College, also in Karachi. Professor Moosa worked in Ireland, and his daughter Haneen, who went to school in Ireland, has written some beautiful poetry, which I have had the opportunity to read. And then we have Mr. Zisham Razzaq, who is a consultant general endocrine surgeon in Cork University Hospital, who is going to reflect on his experiences in Ireland since he came, having trained initially in Pakistan. Following this, we have a very interesting presentation from colleagues from the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Pakistan. There were some technical difficulties in integrating this with the first three presentations, and so it is available separately through a link which we will provide so that you can either follow on and view this presentation this evening, or you can choose to download the link and look at it in your own time. More details of that will follow. So firstly, my good friend, Professor Shamin Qureshi, who I've had the pleasure of meeting in his department in Karachi, and he is going to talk to us about the effects of COVID-19 on surgery in Pakistan.
Hello, Ronan. I'm very thankful to you that you have given me the opportunity to share our experience on this very important webinar of what is happening in Pakistan. And I'm thankful to the College of Surgeons of Ireland, where you are the president for a time being now. And this presentation is regarding the pandemic effect in Pakistan, for giving us the opportunity to share our experience on surgical practice in COVID pandemic in Pakistan. Can I have next slide, please? In Pakistan, the COVID comes gradually from March 20, and initially we have got a slow rise in it, but now we are reaching up to the 8 lakhs after 1.5 years. And this is because that the difference in West and Pakistani COVID is Pakistani people are less affected in total. The total number is only 8 lakhs 45,000 as compared to the England or USA, and the disease is more milder, and we have only got 18,000 deaths in last 1.5 years. Slide, please. If you look the pattern of the COVID in Pakistan, it started in March, and it gradually go up to the June, July. We have got a first surge, and then it's gradually settled down, and we have got a plateau in August, September, October, November, and then it started again to have a second surge which lasts up to January. And after January, the things being a bit settled down, but now from April till today, we're still having a third surge. So this pattern is showing that it is keep coming to us in Pakistan despite of decline in the middle two phases. Next slide, please. In Karachi, we live in the Sindh, and the Sindh is a province where the first case was reported in March, mid of the March, and then it gradually up, and the government in a very strict hand, and the lockdown started initially in Karachi, and the but the peak is going up of the same as June, July, and then it will settle down. Next slide, please. And this is the graphical presentation how the cases are started and move on. Next slide, please. First lockdown was done in March. The government, provincial government, was very fast to move in. The whole of the city got blocked by help of police and the rangers, and the movement stopped in the intercity as well as the intercity. Air traveling is restricted, shopping malls were closed, and the government starts using all media sources to implement the SOPs in the prevention of the COVID. And the people are in Karachi and other area, the people are more educated, so they try to get the COVID SOPs as early as possible. Hospitals measure was also done simultaneously. All hospital staff was restricted to minimal level. All OPDs were closed, both in public and private. Only emergency services were provided. All elective admissions were closed. Work duties of postgraduates and the staff were minimum. No clinical teaching was whatsoever allowed. In emergency, we were doing the services which we have to do with a full PEP, and on arrival of patient, we have to find out whether he's suffering from COVID by taking temperature and his clinical history, and all operations which was clinically thought they are COVID negative were done with full proper SOPs, which include the PEP and the 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 N95 mask. Some people use a double mask also. The patients were shifted to the ward, and they were managed with all SOPs, and only those who was found have a clinical symptom and later proven on the PCR was shifted to the incubation centers, isolation center in our unit. This has happened till the August, and there was great fear and panic in the medical community as well as general public. People are avoiding to travel, seeing people. And in August, when we realize, is in mid-August when we realize is the number of cases come down, the government has started uh, the clinics, and the clinics was done. It started a bit earlier, but it was a very rudimentary clinics because the movement are less, and we started the elective operation with the SOPs that they should be clinically negative COVID patient, and they also have carrying a very recent PCR for 2 days ago that they are negative. Those who are suffered of COVID, we avoid them to come to the for operation for about nearly 4 weeks, and they must have their COVID test. We initially started to do a small cases, and then which last for a day or two in the hospital. The number are also very limited, and we usually wear N95 mask. There no PP was weared in the operation theater. Next slide, please. If you look into the October, September, the operations was lap choles, hernias, thyroid, which confined to a day and two in hospital, and the operations of ileostomy closures and these things are done in the second month and third month because of the confidence when we got, and the stoma reversal is a big problem to us, and few malignancies are also done. But in October, November, December, we were doing as much patients are coming, we are doing them. The number of patients who are coming to the hospital is less. Number of patients coming to the OPD, there are also less, and therefore the number we have done in October, November, and December, and January, February, though there is increased second surge was there, but the number were 40% less than that what we normally does in normal routine days. And this has happened till March, and March and April has come. The third surge has come. In second surge, we continue the same treatment. We didn't find much difference in the patients in our elective list. Next slide, please. So the second wave, I already told you that we did the operation with the same protocols. and we didn't find any difference in the post-operative management of these patients in the hospital. One thing which we noticed that all our staff and postgraduates and these people are all affected in the initial phases of the pandemic, and therefore the most of our postgraduate and the nurses all are suffered, fortunately, with a very mild disease. Next slide, please. Now this is the third wave. From April to date, the number of hospitals is still same. The elective cases are reduced to only cancer and urgent surgeries, and the the academic activities are reduced, and we are also heading for another religious gathering in next few days. And the last time we learned that if you are close to the festivals, the number of cases is high, and this time the COVID says now has got changes variety. It's coming from England and the places, so the COVID varieties change, and therefore we are more cautious on this third wave. Vaccination in Pakistan, you may be interested to know that we started vaccination in February. Initially, all medical officers and the healthcare worker were vaccinated. We are using Sinopharm and Sinovac vaccine, and now we have start vaccination in older people, and now the next phase, the 40 years old people will be vaccinated in next month. Next slide, please. So this is the effect of pandemic on our clinical practice. Now on teaching side, we have got the problems. The clinical contact of the postgraduate is reduced, the number of hours being reduced, the clinical training is markedly affected, and I label them now the COVID affected postgraduate, though they are very good postgraduate of us, and I hope that operative experience and these things will be settled with the next few months. This is all from my side, Robin, Conan, and I hope that whatever you want from my side, I will be happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Professor Qureshi. And that sets the scene. I hope that the festivities of Eid do not lead to an increase in the numbers of cases, as you had wondered about in your video.
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Fawad Ali Moosa, and good afternoon in Pakistan, and I think good morning in Ireland. And Jia Goish, as they say in Irish, if I'm pronouncing it right, Jia Goish. Okay, so first of all, Honorable President, respectable Professor Ronan O'Connell, then all the respected speakers, particularly Professor Khalid Masood Gondal, Professor Mahmood Ayaz from College of Physicians Surgeons Pakistan, and Professor Shamim Qureshi from Jinnah Postgraduate Medical Institute in Karachi, Pakistan again, and Mr. Zishan Razzaq in Ireland and from Cork, and of course all the senior and junior fellows watching from Pakistan in Ireland, all the training as well, people, graduates in Ireland or Pakistan, and of course not forgetting Miss Janelle Sherlock, the organizer. I'm going to share my experience in training in Ireland. That was in 1990, and then coming back to Pakistan. Next, please. My current position, just want to share that I'm a general and laparoscopic surgeon, and I've been chairperson for last 3 years, and ex-faculty of Department of Surgery, Dow University of Health Sciences. As I already mentioned earlier on to Mr. O'Connell, that in Dow University has 2 constituent colleges, Dow Medical College and Dow International, and I had the privilege to teach in both colleges. And I recently have retired from government service. That was in February. And then currently I'm also a member of Faculty of Surgery for the last 2 years in College of Physicians and Surgeons Pakistan. And I'm also a senior examiner and a supervisor at the College of Physicians and Surgeons Pakistan. Next, please. I'll start my experience, share I'll start sharing my experience. I came to Ireland in the first week of January, cold month, obviously, in comparison to Pakistan. And I attended the primary fellowship course in basic medical sciences. And that was a 4-month duration at the RCSI. As you can see in the picture, I'm standing just at the door of RCSI. I'm sure it has much changed now. And that was in Stephens Green. If I can recall, 123 Stephens Green. Next, please. And then I started my training as a senior house officer. And the first assignment of my training was in Galway, University College Hospital, Galway in Newcastle. And I had the privilege to work under Mr. Anthony Martin, Tony Martin, we used to call him. And that was, he was a consultant A&E surgeon. Next, please. Then I continued my training in the same, that is Galway, in the same Galway, same University College Galway in urology. As you can see on the top, I'm sitting with Hugh Charles Bridden. He was a senior consultant then, and that was the 90s, and he was a senior urologist. In the lower picture, you can see I'm sitting with, on the right extreme on the suit, you can see is Mr. Michael Corcoran, a very jolly fella, and he was a very, very friendly person, and really worked. It was nice working with him. Next, please. Then I moved from there again in Galway. That was in Merlin Park Regional Hospital in Galway again, and that was 6 months in orthopedics. And initially, I had an inclination to go to orthopedics before I left Pakistan. And you can see on the top picture, I'm standing with Mr. Joseph Kelly. He was a senior orthopedic consultant. And then you can see in the lower picture, Mr. Michael Gilmore, and he was also a senior consultant orthopedic surgeon. So another good experience in all these both hospitals, who are regional and were catering all the patients from the west of Ireland, starting from Connemara down to Galway and even below that. Next, please. Then I moved to North. That was my first assignment in general surgery. And I worked with 3 consultants there in 1 year. On the extreme left on the top, you can see there was a very senior consultant and an examiner of the Royal College of Surgeons in all 3 colleges in UK and Ireland. His name is Mr. Joe Johnston. And on the right, you can see Mr. Paul Eustace. And that's the picture when he called us for, it was nice of him to call for all the people working under him, including the House Officials, SHO, registrar, to his house, dinner. So he was a general surgeon, but more inclined to practice urology. He was interested in more urology. Then you can see in the bottom picture, that's actually a recent current picture. I couldn't find a picture with me, with myself. That's Mr. Ronan Walden. Mr. Ronan Walden, and he has few brothers. I believe that all brothers, I cannot remember, 4 or 6, and all of them are senior consultants in various fields. One of them, I think, is a gastroenterologist. So Mr. O'Connell might be knowing the other names. And so he was a general surgeon, had recently joined that time, and that was 1992 and 93. He had joined Castlebar. So that was in Mayo General Hospital in Castlebar. That's again a wonderful experience because it was my first general surgical experience. So really enjoyed my time there. Next, please. Then after that, I moved to on the west, but on the southwest of Ireland, that is County Kerry, and that was in Tralee. And I had a good experience again there for 2 years. I worked with Mr. Tom McCormick. You can see in the picture. I don't have the picture of Mr. Spillane, but mainly I worked under supervision of Mr. McCormick. But obviously we used to do on call with Mr. Spillane as well. And then I'll just share in my further slides what sort of experience I got from there. But I do recall the wonderful period, apart from your experience, the wonderful ring of Kerry. I can still remember taking off on call weekends. We used to travel whenever I was not off on call. I was not on call on those weekends. I used to we used to go in the car in the morning, and we used to take a whole ring of Kerry from Tralee to Kilorgillen and then Dingle and then back. Next, please. That's after that, I cleared my fellowship, that is part 2 of RCSI, and then I joined as senior registrar with Mr. Peter McGill, and he's in a good moods in the evening when we went on a dinner. I don't remember the occasion. I attended somebody's, was it a birthday or I cannot remember the occasion, but it was somebody had passed the exam or whatever. So that was in Longford Westmeath General Hospital, Mullingar. And that was again good experience in a way that obviously now that I was a registrar, so I had more cutting experience under supervision. And obviously, so that was, I cannot forget about that. So next, please. Now, these are some pictures while at work and off work. This is in various hospitals of Ireland with the staff and the sister in charges and nurses and the paramedical staff who were all so humble, cooperative, and they were so kind, and with all the typical Irish hospitality. I have no words to express that. Next, please. Again, some more pictures, and these are just pictures. I've really, I have tried to save them, and that's why I could show you now many pictures. Obviously, some of them I did misplace, but I try to, save as many as. But I mean, even if those pictures are not the one which I couldn't show you now, they're in my heart, and I cherish them again and again. I miss Ireland. Next, please. So points of relevance during my training, which really helped me in my career. To start with the preparatory course, Basic Medical Science, what a wonderful course, obviously covering all the basic medical sciences like anatomy, physio, pathology. And at that time, we used to have those sections like, the CT scan sections of the human bodies. And so after that, when I came back to Pakistan, then we had these plastic models introduced. So that was this experience really helped me in clearing my part 1. So that was a wonderful course. I don't know what sort of courses you have now for the MRCSI or the FRCSI part 1, but that was the one which I attended. So then my training post in the accident emergency, one of the busy hospital of Ireland, that's the University Hospital Galway, used to cater all the west of Ireland, even people coming from all over the UK, all over UK and Europe, European countries. So, and I still remember those, one of these hospitals where Mr. Tony Martin, he was a very down-to-earth person, and he really was very much involved in every now and then, and emergencies, all sort of emergencies used to come, and we used to, some emergencies coming from even Portugal sometimes, and, through copter, and we used to wait all night waiting for, something from somebody's coming outside the island from the Portugal waters and some coming from the Irish waters, Okay, then a wonderful experience in Merlin Park Regional Hospital, again a busy hospital from orthopedic point of view, and with Mr. Gilmore and Michael Kelly. And at that time, he used to, I remember Mr. Michael Gilmore used to had developed some new technique that time for dissolving these intervertebral discs. I don't recall exactly what the exact, the material he used to use. And that was a recent thing, which was, and then after that, new technology and new, all these operative things, they started coming and pouring in. And Mr. Kelly, obviously, he was a senior consultant there. Next, please. Then my experience 1 year in general surgery at Mayo under supervision of senior consultant Mr. J.J. Johnston. I really enjoyed and of general safety. This first encounter, and all sort of emergencies. The acute downs and elective surgeries. You talk about everything we used to, starting from thyroid, breast, surgeries, and whatnot, and then of course trauma as well. So we learned the basic principles, and he was always there to guide you, to help you. And so all the consultants of Ireland, I learned the methodical way of doing surgeries, the basics of it. And then obviously as the time and the years went by, I polished myself with my experience in Pakistan. Mr. Paul Eustace was, again, he was very kind, and he was very, he always used to be there whenever you needed him. And obviously he had more interest in urology, but basically he was the general surgeon. Mr. Ronan Walden joined then, and he had a particular interest in laparoscopic surgery. And if I can recall his registrar, he was from India, Mr. Baldota. He was also interested in these. And they used to, I remember one of the ports they created. I don't know whether anywhere else in the world was it developed that time, but I remember that in UK and Ireland, they were one of the few people who really introduced in Ireland these ports where the suction and the irrigation, they developed their own ports. And so he was very active, and I'm sure he is still, I think, the head of the department of the surgery. So my all regards to him, Mr. Ronan Walden. Next, please. So that was, now after that, 2 years in Tralee was very helpful, as I already mentioned, from a Part 2 FRCS. And that was, I worked with Mr. Tom McCormick. Again, down-to-earth person, always there, ready to help you, ready to guide you. And whenever I used to assist him, he used to step back, explain, and do some bit, and always then take back and show you the right way to do it. I mean, this is the way we learned, all the surgeries. So this is where, in Tralee, where I cleared my Part 2 FRCS. And not forgetting that he used to come early morning, cold mornings, especially at least once a week, and used to, he used to convene and arrange special sessions for the people who were for all the candidates who were for the Part 2, and he used for an hour. I think it's 7:30 we used to join, and 8:30 we used to do the round, and used to really help us how to go about it. So I really got good experience there. Then obviously after post-fellowship experience, getting my FRCS in Tralee, I got the job of registrar in surgery in Mullingar, Longford Hospital, and then that was under Mr. Peter McGill, where I got a lot of cutting experience. Obviously, I had become senior now as a registrar, and he used to give me a lot of work to do under supervision and independent as well, where possible. And so I had a good experience there. Next, please. So most of the places where I worked, the hospital infrastructure, setup, organization was excellent, was very good. And the working environment was harmonious. Surgical team, nursing, as I've already mentioned, paramedical, really were all cooperative and friendly. And I tell you, I've been to many countries, but Ireland, I'm not comparing it with anybody, but Irish people, not because that I'm saying it in front of all of you, but I had a really good experience of meeting people, living with people, with who are really down to earth. They were friendly. They had all the warmth, and they were just, I don't have the words to express how good experience was that. And I never felt that I was a foreigner there. To be brief, I just never felt. So I felt at home. There's a proper line and word. I couldn't have that a while ago, those words. So the good words or the best words to describe is, I felt at home being a foreigner, but I've never felt that I was a foreigner. consultant used to take regular teaching rounds. The supervision experience was methodical. Used to have regular case presentation, monthly morbidity and mortality meetings. Actually, Mr. McCormick, I've already mentioned to you, coming in the cold mornings and helping for me for the part 2 FRCS. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. So when I came back to Pakistan in 1996, I sat and cleared the entry test and gave the interview and cleared in the Sindh Public Service Commission, and we have it in all the provinces, and that's for to get a position in a government job. And there are different sort of jobs. There are jobs which are teaching and non-teaching. This was a teaching job, and so I was selected as a surgeon and then assistant professor in Dow Medical College, which later was upgraded to university status in 2004. And then years went by, I got promoted to associate, then professor, and then until last 3 years back, I had an honor to lead as a chairperson of surgery until this February, when due to attainment of superannuation, that is 60 years, I got retired from government service. So I'm currently doing my private practice, and also I'm currently in the faculty and an examiner and a supervisor at the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Pakistan. That's a privilege and honor for me to give this service to the CPSV, Karachi, Pakistan. So throughout my surgical teaching career at Dow University of Health Sciences, I practiced all the basic principles of surgery, which I had learned during my training in Ireland. Just briefly want to mention, which obviously is not my domain, but just want to, that during the COVID period, I also developed, though I don't have it now to show you, but maybe in some other session I may share it. I developed just as on a small scale on a Moodle online that was virtual training because of the COVID restriction. So online classes and online material we shared, and we used to have these multiple choice questions and these virtual like chat and everything was there in Moodle. So I developed that for only a small scale in my group of the postgraduate trainees at CPSP in my unit. Apart from that, in Dow University of Health Sciences, they have also developed a learning management system, LMS. They called it DOES, DOES, and so that's again they are doing all 9 classes. As time to time there is a break. There is even recently also before Eid we had a lockdown because of the COVID thing. So time to time the restrictions are sometimes lax, sometimes totally locked down. So whenever there is lockdown, we opt for online teaching of our undergraduates and postgraduates in all the universities, all the institutions, and it's being practiced. And I'm sure further I don't want to say because Mr. Mahmood Ayaz, Professor Mahmood Ayaz and Professor Gondal and Professor Abrar, they're going to share more about it in their presentations. Next, please. So just coming to end, I also had a beneficial learning experience of basic and advanced endoscopic and laparoscopic skills at National University Hospital, Singapore, under supervision of Mr. Singh Sang Noi. That was only a 6 to 8 weeks period in 2004. So, and then during 23 years of stay at Dow University and Civil Hospital and Dow University Hospital, apart from usual elective and emergency surgery, polytrauma. I have a lot, polytrauma exposure in Pakistan, and CTSP is also conducting advanced life traumas, ATLS workshops for that, for the training of their postgraduates, and attended, facilitated, and conducted several workshops which are focused mainly on medical health professional education, basic advanced surgical laparoscopic skills, all of which part of continued medical education. And recently also I did a certificate course in medical health profession. Lately, my special interest has been in performing laparoscopic mesh repair of abdominal hernias. So that's all for now. A lot to say, a lot to cherish, but again, I would like to thank you, particularly Professor Ronan O'Connell, for especially inviting me and to share my experience in this webinar. Thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
Thank you, Professor Moosa, and in the Irish language, Guramila Mahagat. Thank you so much for your very kind words, and clearly fond memories of working in the west of Ireland. And thank you also from the many patients in Ireland that you have looked after so well. It's lovely to hear such kind words. So I'm very pleased then to ask Mr. Razzaq, who's a consultant in Cork University Hospital. Zeshan, you might reflect a little bit on Professor Moosa's thoughts, and albeit he hasn't been in Ireland for many years, things may have changed. So your reflections on being a Pakistani graduate working in Ireland now would be of great interest.
Thank you so much, Professor O'Connell, and a big hi to all of my colleagues and seniors in Pakistan, particularly in Lahore and Karachi, and to everyone who's listening to this webinar on a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you for the invitation, Professor O'Connell. I've been a regular listener to the Wednesday afternoon webinars since they were commenced by the college and Professor O'Connell last year after COVID. I think the whole college, especially Professor O'Connell, appreciate a big round of applause for this great leadership and innovation that had all of us. So I'm going to, I enjoyed Professor Moosa's talk, although I came to Ireland about 20 years after him. So I'm going to narrate my journey from Pakistan to Ireland, which has been more than a surgical journey. And I'm going to touch briefly my experience of living and working in Ireland. Next slide, please, Janelle. So I have no disclosures, and I'm hoping that this presentation will be relevant to the RCSI members and fellows who have worked in Ireland and are back in Pakistan, like Professor Moosa, but it will also be relevant to the hundreds of Pakistani graduate doctors working in Ireland. Pakistani doctors, like Professor O'Connell said initially in the comments, have been working in Ireland for a long time now, and from interns to consultants have been serving in Ireland for a long duration. We have Mr. Asim Ishtaq, who's the past president of the Irish Medical Organization, and surgeons holding higher positions. Next slide, please. So my surgical journey from Pakistan to Ireland started in 2011. I was doing postgraduate training under the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Pakistan in Islamabad, which is the capital of Pakistan. And HSC at that time recruited a very successful campaign from India and Pakistan to hire 300 doctors, including all specialties were mainly surgery and emergency medicine because there was a huge shortage in Ireland. I think the campaign was really successful and positive as they hired most of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Pakistan trainees. The trainees that were starting their training or in the middle, like myself, were hired at the SHO levels, while the most senior trainees who were at the end of their training were hired as registrars. So I was happy to have this opportunity and accepted this contract way back in 2011. Next slide, please. After coming to Ireland in 2011, I worked in University Hospital Kerry for a couple of years as an SHO. Like Professor Moosa, I also worked with Mr. Tom McCormick, and Professor Moosa will be happy to know that Mr. McCormick is still working in University Hospital Kerry. So in those 2 years as SHO in Kerry, I did my membership exam before I moved to Cork, which is in southwest of Ireland, and worked as a registrar for the next 6 years. I'm really grateful to all my supervisors, the mentors in Kerry and Cork, especially Professor Paul Redmond, who, through their hard work, were able to streamline my career. I did my exit fellowship exams in 2019, the intercollegiate ones, and before I got onto the special register in 2020 in IMC. Next slide, please. So what are the pathways of Pakistani surgical trainees in Ireland? So one of them has been the CPSP HSE exchange program. I won't talk on that much because Professor Ayaz and Professor Gondal will talk on it. Then a majority of doctors coming from Pakistan to Ireland work in the field of surgery have been on a non-formal training pathway like myself. So in the next few slides, I reflect on that. A few Pakistani doctors have been successfully on to the formal training pathway in the different specialties in surgery and doing very well. Finally, there's a scope in Irish Medical Council for surgeons of Pakistani origin to get onto the special registration and work as a consultant here based on their Pakistani experience and exams. Next slide, please. So the CPSP and HEC exchange program started in 2012, I stand corrected. This has been a very successful program. Again, I won't touch much on it as CPSP will, but I think it's a great option for those Pakistani surgeons who want to do their basic surgical training in Pakistan and come over to Ireland for a couple of years as part of higher surgical training, get the Irish experience, go back to Pakistan, do the exit exams in Pakistan, and work on the experience that they gained in Ireland for the benefit of patients and get all the modern technology in Ireland to get back in Pakistan and work on that. Next slide, please. Obviously, while coming to Ireland, and Professor Moosa reflected on that, there is a cultural shock. Although, like Professor Moosa's experience, my experience had been very positive. The people of Ireland, all the doctors and consultants in Ireland have been very welcoming to Pakistani doctors. There was a big Pakistani community here in Ireland and Cork when we arrived here, both inside and outside the hospital. So except the weather, Ireland had been very welcoming, and there was very little element of culture shock when I arrived here. I suppose for doctors working in Pakistan who want to or pursue to come to Ireland, there's a slight difference in practice. Endoscopy in Ireland is being done by surgeons, especially in Model 3, Model 2, and also in Model 4 hospitals, while in Pakistan, endoscopy is under the domain of gastroenterology. So I had to learn endoscopy when I came here as a senior house officer and later as a registrar. Surgical oncology, unlike in Pakistan, is very much developed in Ireland, and most of my rotations in Ireland have been in surgical oncology, where I have gained a lot of experience from the world experts in this field. Litigation as compared to East has always been a problem in the West, and Ireland is one of the countries with the highest litigation, although thankfully up to now I had no experience of it so far. Next slide, please. So I suppose for the next 2 or 3 minutes, I'll talk about the initiatives which have been taken by different organizations in the past decade or so since I've arrived in Ireland for doctors in surgery or the non-training pathways like myself. So I'll briefly touch on that. Next slide, please. So in 2011, when I arrived in Ireland, at the same time, the professional competence scheme was launched by the college and Professor Sean Tierney, who's the Dean of Professional Development Program in RCSI. For those who don't know, it's a legal requirement for all doctors working in Ireland in all specialties to maintain a professional competence while gaining 50 points in a year, including both internal and external points, and doing a mandatory audit once a year. For me, being on non-formal training pathway, it helped me in gaining all my CBD, getting most of the surgical workshops in my specialties, both nationally, internationally, transatlantic, and in Europe, and getting research and audit that eventually helped me in getting a successful application for special registration and IMC later on. So professional competence have been a great initiative by the college, and the college, and especially Professor Cheney they deserve a huge congratulations for that. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Janelle. Thank you. And as you all know, Professor Ronan O'Connell has been taken over the presidency of the college last year, has always put the agenda on non-training surgical doctors higher on his priorities. So last year, a short life working group was established as a collaboration between RCSI, HEC, and IMC. A survey was sent on before Christmas last year to all the non-trainees how their training could be improved and how to improve their surgical training in Ireland that would help them, not only them, but the country in the future. Mr. Mohammed Umar, who's shown here, is a senior registrar working in Tala Hospital, and he's the NCH representative in this short life working group, which hopefully will be able in the near future to improve the training for doctors on non-training pathway in Ireland. Next slide, please. And a very exciting project will be launched later on this month called the National Doctors Training and Planning NERE portfolio. So the doctors on the non-training pathway in surgery and other fields would be able to log in their training, and it is possible to get a consultant validation on that, and that will definitely help most of the doctors on non-training pathway in their career progression in the future, which was an issue in the past. Next slide, please. The NDTP has also been very instrumental in helping doctors at different levels. So when I was applying for my special registration a year and a half ago, Professor Sean Tierney and the college and the NDTP, they held a full day for guidance on application for special registration, and that helped me personally a lot in my successful application. Next slide, please. One of the issues for non-training doctors working in surgery is the poor passing rate in the exit FRCS examination being organized by the JCIE and ISB. And one of the reasons for that is, as compared to trainees who have a more formal pathway to enter this exam, the entry requirements for non-trainees have been relaxed. As a result, they don't perform that well, especially in Section 1 FRCS and also in Section 2. Next slide, please. And as a result, the JCIE and the Intercollegiate Specialty Board have raised from January 2023, they're going to change the standards. They're going to make the criteria a bit strict, and all these changes are aimed to increase the success rate of doctors on the non-formal training pathway in the exit examination, and hopefully that will serve the purpose. Next slide, please. So in terms of other initiatives, it's a world of social media that we live in these days. With my other colleagues, when we arrived in Ireland in 2011, we established a Facebook group called Doctors in Ireland. And I was just checking yesterday, we have close to 20,000 members on it now. And throughout the last decade or so, this social media group has been very helpful in helping the new doctors coming to Ireland, not only from Pakistan, but also from other countries like India, Sudan, etc. There's a good collaboration between Irish and Pakistani doctors, and last year an Irish Pakistani Medical Association was launched, and they're holding regular webinars every 4 to 6 weeks, including surgical webinars to help doctors, especially in the non-training pathway, to progress in Ireland. Next slide, please. So in summary, my experience of moving from Pakistan to Ireland has been a story of success like Professor Moosa. I think we've been blessed to have world-class surgical training in Ireland, not because the hospitals are high class, but also the mentors. Most of the consultants we work in are very experienced with good fellowship experience in the States and Europe. There has been a lot of emphasis on audit and research, and being EU naturalized, it's very easy to get access to EU and USA for fellowships and higher surgical courses. Next slide, please. So with that, I thank you, Professor O'Connell, and all my colleagues again. My contact details are here if anybody from Ireland or Pakistan wants to contact me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Razzaq, for that. And I'm delighted to know that there is now the Irish Pakistani medical group, and that will be very supportive of any young Pakistani trainees who come to Ireland. And I know they will experience a lot of support from your colleagues, and hopefully a warm welcome, even though the weather may be a little colder than in Pakistan. So thank you to Professor Qureshi, Professor Moosa, and Mr. Razzaq for 3 very interesting presentations. And certainly it is inspiring to know that, and indeed reassuring to know how much surgical experience in Ireland has meant to our colleagues, Professor Moosa and Mr. Razzaq. And as I have no difficulty in pointing out, we are completely reliant in this country on overseas graduates, particularly from Pakistan, for delivering the services that the Health Service Executive needs. So we are very grateful to all our colleagues. You will now be able to see a link to the presentation that we recorded from our colleagues in the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Pakistan. I know it's late on the Wednesday evening here in Ireland, but those of you who wish to continue watching, please follow this link. Alternatively, you may wish to download the link and look at it in your own time. It is of considerable interest to all of our members and fellows in Pakistan, and indeed our colleagues in Ireland who have been trained in Pakistan and are here either on secondment or working in the HSE. So for those of you leaving the meeting now, good evening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you next week.